I recently found another Dandy Worlds AU called Sweet Blood, and funny enough, it kept popping up on my homepage, and it's from a YouTube channel called Star Leah Dub, who is a phenomenal voice actor, by the way. Now, the original comic was made by Chudo, I'm going to call him, over here on TikTok. And this one has a very unique twist. Since Dandy's World is already kind of an infection AU with the Twisted running around attacking other toons, this AU does something a bit unique and offers up this idea called Sweet Blood, which only some toons have and other toons will begin craving, turning bloodthirsty. But let me explain how this actually happens. Now, in chapter 1 of this AU, we see a character named Devan hard at work here until this person named Sam rushes into the room and starts screaming at him. Apparently, these humans, along with the toons here, work in a movie studio and they are producing a cooking show, with Dandy and Sprout being the main characters slash headliners. But it seems like Dandy keeps changing the scripts, which is why Sam is so upset here, even getting to the point where they're ready to punch Devan in the face. But before things can really get out of control, a person who seems to be their boss comes into the room and breaks them up, demanding that they act with some professionalism. But more important than that, he tells them if the problems between Sprout and Dandy continues, they're both going to lose their job since they are the handlers for these toons. And while Sam just storms away, Devan starts plotting immediately. And we get to see the start of his plan when he goes to speak with Dandy. And by the way that he grabs them here, I thought that he was really about to lash out, but he does something even worse. He tells Dandy that he needs to get rid of Sprout. And he isn't just talking about getting Sprout off the show, but rather out of this life. And of course, this freaks Dandy out because he and Sprout are friends, even though they bicker from time to time. But Devan makes it clear that Sprout isn't Dandy's friend, but simply a crybaby. And if Dandy doesn't get rid of him, Devan is going to lose his job, even going as far as to scream at Dandy that he's given him an order. But instead of obeying, Dandy just tears up and runs away, unwilling to snake out his friend. And for a moment, it looks like Pebble is going to run after him, but Devan stops him, praising him for being such a good boy and then giving him a strawberry. And this is where the AU starts to get a little diabolical. The toons are only given certain foods because their handlers don't want them to start getting a taste for their own friends. So in this case, Devan is giving Pebble a strawberry in the hopes that the dog will then go and take a bite or two out of Sprout. And based on this dark image of Sprout here, I can guess that they're going to have an encounter real soon. Now, at the start of chapter 2, we see Pebble wake up, and of course he wants a bone. Seeing that his friend is hungry, Sprout goes over to pet him and get him some breakfast. But then we see Pebbles actually start sniffing his arm, and then he opens his mouth. And for a moment, I thought that he was going to give like a cute little playful bite, because he looks very innocent here. But to my surprise, he gives Sprout a walking dead chomp.
So good and tasty.
And of course, Sprout starts to scream for help, alerting all his friends and causing them to run over, with Cosmo being the first one on the scene. But instead of getting Pebbles off him quickly, Cosmos kind of panics and freezes, and he doesn't move until Sprout screams that he needs him. With that, all the toons come together to grab Pebble and rip him off Sprout. And as you would imagine, Pebble took a chunk of his flesh with him. And I love how the voice actor kind of made this little cute humming sound here when Pebbles is walking away with the flesh. Which, when you think about it, is so out of place considering the violence that has just occurred here. I also found it hilarious that when Sprout gets mad, he starts speaking in Spanish. Now, after a short argument with Dandy where he was able to calm Sprout down, we then cut over and see him being bandaged up. And while this is happening, we learn how some of the toons were created. Apparently, Delilah made some toons using edible ingredients, and this is why all the toons have very strict diets. When Devan fed Pebble the strawberry, he allowed him to get a taste for something only the edible toons have inside them, and that is a thing called sweet blood. Another important detail that is revealed here is that once Pebbles actually smelled the sweet blood, he started acting rabid, as if he was starving and Sprout was the only thing that he could eat. And the reason that Sprout and Cosmo look so freaked out here is because they started to understand that this could happen with the other toons as well if they learn about the sweet blood. And while Sprout tries to put his fears to rest by saying that they just need to isolate Pebble and keep this secret from the others, I believe that if Devan really wants the other toons to go after Sprout, he may introduce sweet blood to them just like he did with Pebble. And as we see here, Dandy seems to understand Devan is behind this as well. In the next scene, we see Pebble is still chewing on Sprout's arm meat, and then we see Goob come and pick it up. And it seems like he immediately becomes bloodthirsty and uses his ability to try and grab Cosmos to pull him to him. But before he can take a bite, Tisha comes in clutch with a punch to the jaw. And I just want to point out that when we freeze the frame here, we can see that Sprout's blood is all over Goob's mouth here, and he also looks much more vicious after consuming it. Now, after seeing Goob try to literally eat Cosmo, Sprout gathers everybody up and tells them that they need to get out of there. But as they're running, we see even more toons have consumed the sweet blood, specifically Scrap and Gigi. And while Sprout is trying to get away, Scrap uses her tail to wrap around his scarf. And once they drag him to the ground, they say,
"Oh, Sprout, we're hungry."
Luckily, Dandy and the others are able to find V and Astro, and my boy wastes no time using his powers to get Sprout out of danger. And once he gets his bearings, he tells all his friends that they're basically being hunted by the non-edible toons and that they need to find Ginger and Shrimpo and any other toons that would make a good snack before Goob and his crew can get to them. And even though Astro and some of the other toons want Sprout to hide, he refuses, saying that he needs to warn their friends. And honestly, I have a lot of respect for him here. I think a lot of people in this situation simply would have looked out for themselves and hid. But he also makes a very good point when he looks at Cosmos and he says, "What if they try to eat your cousin?" Who of course he's talking about Ginger. But this doesn't seem to actually get through to Cosmo the way that he thought it would, and the only person really willing to go out and look for the other toons with him is Dandy. And while Sprout isn't thrilled about this, he has to take whatever help he can get. Now, before the two of them head out, we see Cosmo give Sprout this bracelet, and he promises to stay safe while Sprout is away, especially because he's the only edible toon in the group that is staying behind. Now, surprisingly, Dandy and Sprout found not only Ginger and Shrimpo, but a few other toons like Yada, Tegan, and even Louie. And then we get this cute scene of Ginger and Cosmo hugging, clearly happy to see that they are both still unharmed. And while the two of them are catching up, we cut over to Tegan and Glisten, and he starts asking about Toodles, obviously believing that she may be craving sweet blood just like the others. But Tegan refuses to believe that and decides that she's going to go out and find her because she's just an innocent little girl. Their argument ended up getting so loud that they got the attention of the others, and we see Shrimpo come and grab her wrist, saying that she shouldn't go because it'll just give the crazies an opportunity to attack her and taste more sweet blood. And he also makes it clear that none of them will be able to come save her if she gets into trouble. But just like with Sprout, T would rather die than let an innocent child get hurt out there. In the next scene, she actually finds Toodles, and just by looking at her eyes here, we know that she's infected with the bloodlust. But Tegan is too trusting to see it, and she ends up getting her cup head broken and all the sweet tea drained out by Toodles. And then we fade to black. In the next chapter, we see that V has gone missing, and when Boxton pops up, Sprout tells him to go find her in the kitchen. And when he gets there, we see V looking inside the fridge, which is odd because she doesn't need to eat. Things get weirder when Boxton calls out to her and she seems to be ignoring him. But once we get a look at her face, we can see what she's thinking. She's saying, "Why are they all so hungry? I need to eat. But you can't. I'm the one who's..." But before she can finish her final thought, Boxton's voice finally gets through to her. And based on the interaction here, it seems like she may be malfunctioning, which is why she's in the fridge looking for food, even though Boxton points out she can't eat anything. And after that conversation, we see Louie pop up and tell Boxton that he should tell the others what's going on with V, and I don't blame him. But one thing that we'll learn as we go through this AU is that a lot of the toons are not taking this seriously enough. The next scene takes place a couple hours later, around 4 in the morning, and we see that everybody is asleep except for Cosmo and Yada. And for some reason, Yada isn't taking the situation very seriously and decides to grab Cosmo and go play hide and seek. And the last thing that we see is Sprout watching them go, but he's so tired that he can't do anything except fall back to sleep. Later that morning, we see Louie wakes up Sprout in a panic, and he lets him know that Yada and Cosmo are gone. And even though a few of the toons are afraid, most of them come together in order to go search for their friend, fearing that if they leave them out there for too long, they'll be eaten, just like Tegan was. And of course, as they are rushing out, we see that the camera is still following them and recording their every move. And Devan seems to be really enjoying the chaos that he started, saying, "2 birds, 1 shot. Sounds fun." After that, we cut over to the toons searching for Cosmo and Yada, and surprisingly, they find Yada fairly quickly, but Cosmo is nowhere in sight. And they can't even question Yada because she's dead asleep. And honestly, I don't know why everybody in this AU sleeps like the dead, but it seems like a bad trait to have in an AU where everybody's trying to eat you. Now, after realizing that they have no idea where Cosmo can be, the team starts arguing about if they should head back to their safe zone or continue looking. And we see that Sprout feels guilty about not being able to stop him from leaving. And while he's beating himself up, he hears a slight gargling sound in the distance. And when he runs over, we see this image. Cosmo has been almost completely devoured. And of course, Sprout and everyone else starts to freak out because at this point, I don't think nobody has actually really seen somebody get hurt in this AU. They know that Tegan never came back, but I don't think any of them actually saw what happened to her. So this is a very sobering reality check. And of course, Sprout is hit the hardest, hugging the remains of his friend and begging him to wake up, saying, "You can't be gone now. I need you. Open your eyes. Don't leave me hanging like this." We also see that in his anger, Sprout has said that he's going to take out any of the Toons responsible for taking out his friend. And while his anger is definitely justified, after seeing what the bloodthirsty Toons did to Cosmo, most of them do not want a head-on fight with these crazies. So the crew grabs Sprout and they drag him back to the base, kicking and screaming, with him saying that he would rather die than leave Cosmo behind. And as they're pulling him away, the last thing that we see is one of the crazies come and continue to feed on poor Cosmo. Put your thoughts in the comments real quick. Do you think they should have stayed with Cosmo, or at the very least tried to take him back to the base? Or do you think they made the right call by just leaving him behind to be basically eaten on? Now, once the team gets back to their base, it becomes clear that Sprout is the only one willing to accept how serious the situation is right now. V literally says that he's just overreacting, and Shrimpo calls him a pessimist, which just means that he's being overly negative. But in reality, Sprout is the only one showing any real emotion. That is until we see Ginger again. She notices that they were able to find Yada and they're hugging her over on the side here. And when she asks about Cosmo, they try to lie and say that he's fine. But Sprout doesn't let the lie blossom. He nips it in the bud and tells Ginger that Cosmo was eaten. And just by looking at her face here, we know that she is hit hard by this news. And the voice actor did a great job of bringing this next part to life.
How many times do I have to tell you? He's dead! Stop making me repeat it because I saw it. I saw it, Ginger. Your cousin D-I-E-D.
After that monologue, Ginger walks up and she slaps Sprout, basically blaming him for the death of Cosmo, even going as far to say that he pretty much did it to him himself. But Sprout doesn't stand for the slander, and he lets everyone know that it was Yada that actually dragged Cosmo away, and the fact that she isn't taking the situation seriously is the reason that they lost Cosmo. And Ginger responds by saying that she wants Yada to pay for what she did, preferably with her life. And I was really surprised to see that the other Toons are upset at Sprout for telling the truth, but he doesn't pay them any attention and is actually speaking to Cosmo, or I guess more accurately, a version of Cosmo that his broken mind has kind of come up with. And he vents about how Yada's actions were just straight up stupid, especially after seeing what happened to Tegan when she went out, driving home the point that this isn't a game. But Cosmo hits him with a little bit of truth as well when he says that it isn't all Yada's fault. Sprout could have gotten up and stopped them from leaving, but instead, he just went back to sleep. And as I said earlier, I obviously don't think that this is really Cosmo speaking right now. I think it's actually just Sprout's guilt. And as cute as this final scene is in a way, once you remember that Sprout is kind of losing his mind, it takes a much sadder tone. Especially when Sprout's final words of this chapter is, "I wish I found you alive." In the next scene, we see that Devan is not happy with the fact that none of the crazy Toons have been able to get Sprout. But more importantly, it seems like he still expected Dandy to get rid of him like he asked him to do in the beginning of this AU. But since that hasn't happened, Devan has moved over to plan B, which is to have V get rid of him. And we see that the reason that V was acting so weird earlier is because Devan has this remote that seems to be affecting her behavior. In this case, making her hungry. And then we see this image of Yada where V identifies that Yada's body is not made of candy, but her insides are. And then we get this image of her completely hollowed out with V kneeling in front of her. After that, we see this short animation. Now, a couple of things really stood out in the animation. The first being that the version of Cosmo that Sprout has made up in his mind was actually trying to protect him here, showcasing again just how much this whole situation has really affected Sprout. I also find it interesting that Astro didn't hesitate at all when it came time to put V down. He seems to be one of the few people outside of Sprout who's actually taking the situation seriously. In the final chapter, we see Sprout and Shelly are sleeping while Astro is keeping watch, and I love how he's using his powers to actually give them a happy dream. But over in the corner, we see that Dandy is still awake and looking very sad. But then someone calls his name and tells him to come to the other side of the room. As he's walking over, Astro sees him and decides to follow. And I like this small detail here that once Astro leaves, Sprout is no longer having a peaceful rest. You can kind of see it in his face here. Now when Dandy gets to the other side of the room, the voice tells him to look up, and Dandy sees the camera pointed right at him. And of course, Devan reveals that he's been watching Dandy and all the other toons the whole time. And I find it funny that since Astro doesn't see the camera, he thinks that Dandy is going crazy here. But as he listens closer, he can hear Devan talking through the camera and telling Dandy that if he would have just gotten rid of Sprout when he asked, no one else would have had to die. And hearing this, Dandy is starting to break down, asking where Delilah is. And this is where we learn that no one's coming back to this building until tomorrow. And since Devan knows that he's getting fired, the only thing he wants now is to see Sprout perish. Now, while Dandy is freaking out, telling Devan that he's going to pay for what he's done, Astro comes out of the shadows and starts to question Dandy, wanting to know if he was really going to take out Sprout. But before Astro can respond, Devan chimes in again and says, "I don't think you'll have to wait until tomorrow to say goodbye to your dear friend." And then we hear Sprout scream in the distance, forcing Astro and Dandy to rush back over to the group, not wanting anybody else to get eaten. But as they're running back to their safe zone, we see a bunch of the crazies come out of the shadow, sweet blood all over their faces, and their eyes are blood red. And the final thing that we see is Devan telling them to follow, meaning that Astro and Dandy are going to lead these guys right to the safe room. But surprisingly, when we do cut back over to Sprout, what we see is him barely opening his eyes, and what he sees is Yada and Tegan after they had been attacked. And of course, seeing this, he starts to freak out a little bit. That is until he hears some moaning in the distance, and he looks over to see that Ginger and Shrimpo are also tied up. And even though this is clearly not a funny situation, I do find it kind of funny that there's a little pamphlet here that says food on it, just in case anybody was confused on what was about to happen to these two. And seeing that his friends are in trouble, of course he goes ahead and grabs a knife and says that he's going to get them out of there. And after he actually cuts them free, for a moment he thinks that everything is going to be okay until he opens his eyes again and sees that his friends are gone, the only thing left in their place being Sweet Blood. And then he starts to see the table that he was on start to crumble piece by piece, and all that there is in the background is darkness, almost as if he's about to fall into nothingness. And then we see him start to plead with nobody in particular, saying, "No, please stop. I don't want to die. Help me, please." But there's nobody here. He does end up managing to grab onto the side of the table here and pull himself up, but what he sees is this red eye, and then he starts to scream again. Once we can get a closer look at it, we see that those red eyes actually belong to Pebble. And if all this wasn't bad enough, the dog has Cosmo in his mouth, and we see his friend tell him, "Sprout, it hurts." And I'm sure most of you have probably figured it out by now, but this is all just like a dream that Sprout is having. All this is going on in his mind, and I think it's just supposed to reconfirm that he's slowly going crazy after everything that has happened. But Sprout doesn't realize that none of this is real, so of course he balls his fist and starts walking over to Pebble, and then he grabs the little dog and starts to squeeze, saying that you're disgusting and you're gonna pay for this. And as he's squeezing the life out of the little guy, you can tell by his face here that he is definitely gone over the edge. And then we hear somebody scream in the distance, and this is where I figured out that Dandy and Astro didn't actually hear Sprout screaming, but somebody else. And it seems like that scream was able to wake Sprout up from his little rampage, and what he's actually choking, or I guess who he's actually choking, is Blot. And then we cut back over to the rest of the toons, and they all look horrified, probably thinking that Sprout has lost his mind, just like some of the bloodthirsty toons outside. And that fear only grows once they realize that Blot is the person that he just choked out. Unfortunately, that is the final chapter of this AU so far, but I'm pretty sure that the creator is going to finish it at some point. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with Sprout, especially considering that he has definitely lost his mind a little bit, and maybe like he can't be trusted to be around these other toons. We don't know if he actually took Blot's life or not, but at the very least, he hurt him really bad. I'm also really curious to see what Astro and Dandy are going to do when they get back to the group, because as of right now, Astro has been pretty quick to put people down if he sees that they've like been corrupted or just bad toons in general. So I wonder how he's going to respond to Sprout. But with that being said, let me know what you guys think about this AU down below. If you enjoyed this video, check out this video on the screen here, and make sure to go give the original creator some love as well. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time with another one. Peace, peace.